So again, welcome to everyone. And let me start, I guess, by thanking to Paula Lillard Preschlack for making the time for the Zoom, for being with us. So everyone can attend this first session for free without having to pay anything and gain the knowledge that we, I guess, all are interested in. First, let me tell you something about Paula, even though I guess most of you already know her, and maybe that's why you are here, because you respect her as a very experienced Montessorian. And then I will give the word to her, and maybe she can introduce herself in her own words, and then we can start. You know that Paula has a large experience of observing children from birth to adulthood for more than 25 years of teaching and leading a Montessori school community. She is trained AMI from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, and also in elementary levels. And she also audited the adolescent orientation with the North American Teachers Association. I guess you can imagine that as a head of school, she loves to connect with families, and she loves to help to spread the word about the amazing benefits of Montessori education. And I think you can also imagine that she likes to write, because she writes through her blog, or through a blog on her school's website. And the love for writing, I guess you can see also in her upcoming book, probably soon, which is called Every Child's Potential and How Montessori Education Fosters Essential Life Traits. Paula, did I forget something?
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Should I start?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. I want to start by thanking Lucy and Childhood Potential so much for this opportunity to connect with people from all over the world at once. It's really, really special for me. And I'm humbled and so excited to get to talk with you about my very favorite topic that I'm so passionate about, to speak with parents and educators about Montessori education. So I'm going to start by telling you something a little more personal about myself. I'm the youngest of 5 daughters. And when I was a baby, my mother was getting her master's in education at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. And her final project became a book. That became, and this is the original cover of Montessori, a Modern Approach. And on the back of the original cover, that's me when I was very small with the pink tower and my mother. And this book became a real classic. Many of you have probably seen it. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's available in so many languages all around the world. And she went on to write 3 more books about Montessori. One of them she co-authored with one of my older sisters, Lynn Jessen. And Lynn and my mother, Paula, also founded Forest Bluff Montessori School in Lake Bluff, Illinois. Another one of my older sisters is Angela Lillard, and she is a professor at the University of Virginia and doing so much research about Montessori education and showing the benefits of this form of education. So be sure to look her up as well, Angela Lillard. And she wrote a book as well, Montessori, the Science Behind the Genius. So we have a bit of a Montessori family in that sense, and I grew up all around it, and it's been very much a part of my life. I also love humor, and I wanted to share my sense of humor with you and my love for laughing. So I collect these New Yorker cartoons, if you've ever seen them. And I lost the one that I want to show you first, but I'm going to describe it to you. It's 2 couples coming together on a city sidewalk. And one of the couples looks really happy. They have their arms around each other and they're looking so free and happy. And the other couple are pushing two strollers with children in them. And their hair is disheveled and they look really miserable and haggard. And the happy couple is saying to them, well, we found that we just missed the theater and going out to dinner so much, so we gave the kids away. So I share this with you because I wanted to start by thanking you for not throwing the kids away or giving them away, but by taking the time to be here today.
Jean-Marie?
And thinking about your children. It really is the way that we invest in the future. Our children are the future. And so every time we stop and really take time to think about them, we're investing in our societies, in our countries, in each other, in humankind. So nothing could be more important and so noble. So thank you so much for being here with me and sharing this care and love and concern for our children of the future. So another cartoon I want to share with you. This one is also from the New Yorker. And it's two people meeting on a city street again. And one has a child in a stroller, and the other is meeting with her. And the woman with the child in the stroller says, of course he can walk, but why should he? And I love that because I think it shows how often adults misunderstand and misinterpret what children need for their best development. And Montessori was different in this way. So what Dr. Montessori did that most adults don't do is watch children and observe them carefully before deciding the best way to help them. And what she discovered is that children are already learning and growing and educating themselves all the time in all the necessary ways to be successful in the world. But they can only do this well when we support them and remove unnecessary obstacles and help this natural development. So Montessori took the paradigm that the child is forming themselves. All children do this actively. They build their own brains and their own bodies, psychologically and physically. And she called this phenomenon self-formation. Taking this phenomenon into account points educators towards how children learn. And children are in this special stage of life when their tendencies drive them towards behaviors that make this process happen. They quite literally use the material of their surroundings to learn about the world and build their own unique personalities, intellects, and knowledge. And this process is easy to see when you watch a baby. You watch the infant crawling around on the floor and they want to put everything in their mouths and they want to touch everything. And you can see them just feeding themselves by interacting with their environment. Every child learns and grows from interacting with their immediate surroundings, with things and with people. And this is how they create their own unique view of the world. But the baby has to be moving and interacting with the environment in order to learn. A 10-year-old boy has to be asking questions and gathering information from different parts of his environment in order to think about his interests and learn. And an adolescent girl has to be talking and interacting in order to learn about social life. So it may seem obvious to us, and yet the methods for teaching children in so many conventional schools tend towards passivity. No matter the varying teaching methods or fads in education, children must be active, doing the learning by their own efforts. Montessori speaks directly to this fact. Dr. Montessori saw that children inherently have natural internal drives to explore. She also recognized all aspects of children's personalities. Their physical, psychological, social, and intellectual selves develop in sync. Education, therefore, must aid this process deliberately by being a help to the whole child. So every time Montessori teachers present something to children, they work with the child's whole personality. They invite children to engage in their own learning. The children become people who engage in the world around them by habit. Because Montessori teachers provide environments and activities that draw in children's attention repeatedly, children develop strong abilities to sustain their focus. And when teachers present information in a deliberate, natural, organized way, children build internal organization in the structures of their own minds. And this way, fundamental traits such as being engaged in what you're doing, being able to focus your attention, and organizing how you do things, traits that are essential to succeed in life, are built. Montessori activities attract the children because they're enjoyable and pleasurable to them, because they serve inner developmental purposes that children and even the adults around them may not be aware of, but that are always at play. So Dr. Montessori's perspective offers a clear way of seeing the purpose of childhood and the potential therein. She made constant references to nature and to the phenomena in nature. And so her approach to children is always in this context of the natural world. She designed a way to teach that actually fits children. Every decision, every piece of material, every structure in Montessori education is directly related to observations that Montessori made and that have been repeated by Montessori teachers. Montessori educators approach children based on their own careful and thorough observations, so they too know what to work with. They learn to recognize children's characteristics and needs as they are and not as they think they should be. But let's take a moment and think about what education should be. Our children are preparing for an uncertain future, and that has always been true, but it feels even more urgent now that our world is changing so rapidly. It just seems to be accelerating in every way. In technology, science, medicine, changes in our environment. And instead of being anxious by this rate of change, our children need to cultivate their abilities to adapt. Montessori education is all about fostering natural traits that support adaptability. Montessori supports children building themselves. So when I ask parents and educators and business leaders what abilities they think children need for the future, people always say the same things, any audience that I speak to. And I noticed that Sean Edwards, who spoke for Childhood Potential a while back, she mentioned the same thing. So I know that many others are seeing this as well. When you ask people, what do children need to prepare themselves for the future? They'll say that children will need to think creatively. They'll need to be able to innovate, to collaborate, and to solve problems effectively. They just give descriptive words like persistent, resilient, confident, compassionate, intellectually curious. People recognize that children and young adults need to cultivate their abilities to learn new things, to view failures as learning opportunities, and to persevere with lifelong passions. In essence, the next generation needs to feed their adaptability for anything that comes their way. So considering this, let's for a moment think and ask ourselves whether current education systems really meet education's goals. If grades and scores drive progress in our schools, how can children learn not to fear failures? When children are stopped mid-thought to leave one subject of study and change to another every 50 minutes or so, how can they develop focus and get deeply engaged in what they're doing? If they are restricted during class time from interacting with each other and taught to compete with each other for there to be a winner, how can our children really learn to truly collaborate with each other? And after they are told what information to acquire, when and how to learn it, and where to apply it, how can children develop creativity, independence, and resourcefulness? Most schools fall into this description of grading and testing and conventional systems because they are relying on the premise that children's minds are like buckets to be filled with information. And because of that premise, schools have adopted this factory-like style of a very organized way of dispensing information, changing the teacher. The children have to go from room to room and so on. And there's a reason that this all came about. Children are treated in this sense as being passive, whether the adults can see it or not. Dr. Angela Lillard, in her book, Montessori, the Science Behind the Genius, has a great introduction that really explains the history of how this came about and why this is happening in our schools. I highly recommend that if you're more curious about it. But Montessori took a different stance, that children form themselves and that education should be designed to be an aid to that process. So she really thought this through. Other constructivists who also had the idea that children construct themselves, they have wonderful ideas, but they never made their premise practical by really spelling it out in all the details. But Montessori did, and she was very thorough. She honed her approach from 1907 all the way into the 1950s, 5 decades of one person's continual experimentation and study with collaborators all around the world with children from all walks of life. So she was able to really spot what is universal in human behavior and how we could design an educational approach that really meets this universal human being. I think it's safe to say that after 120 years, Montessori is not an experiment anymore, that it really, really works. There's actually an inherent structure that makes Montessori work, and that's what this series is about. We've established that Montessori differs from conventional schooling in action because it matches child development. But children do not automatically respond to Montessori just because it meets their characteristics and their needs, and that they're treated like self-directed learners. Montessori may not be like conventional schooling, but it is also not like other progressive models that employ a few disjointed concepts like hands-on learning, multi-age classrooms, and following the child's interests. These are all wonderful components that we have in Montessori, but if you only have a few of them and you don't have an entire structure that supports this, it falls apart and doesn't really go anywhere. So if you only employ such ideas, you can't get very far or find consistent, meaningful structure for results.